You know, in life we often crave connection, but the truth is some people have built entire fortresses around their hearts. They've spent years learning to survive by keeping distance, by saying, I don't need anyone. And maybe you've loved one of those people. Maybe you felt the sting of their silence, the confusion of their absence, the ache of their emotional walls. But here's what you must understand. When the avoidance starts missing you, it isn't instant and it isn't loud. It's quiet, it's subtle, it's divine. It's the whisper of their soul breaking through years of protection, because love, real love, has a way of reaching places logic can't touch. At first, they'll tell themselves it's nothing. They'll bury it under distraction, under work, under pride. But as time passes, something inside them begins to stir. That space you left, the space once filled with your laughter, your energy, your presence, becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, they see their own emptiness. See, every human being, no matter how avoidant, carries two primal needs, the need for freedom and the need for love. But what many don't realize is that freedom without love becomes isolation. And love without freedom becomes suffocation. The power is in the balance. When they start missing you, they might not reach out right away. They might hover at the edges of your world, watching, remembering, questioning. But that's the moment their awakening begins, because when the soul begins to miss someone, it's not about missing the person. It's about missing the version of themselves they became in that connection. You reflected their light back to them. You showed them what safety could feel like. Now here's your moment of truth. When they start missing you, it's not your job to chase, it's your job to rise, to keep your energy high, your spirit strong, and your heart open but guarded by wisdom. Because your wholeness, your peace, becomes the very frequency that draws them back, not your pursuit. Remember, transformation never happens in comfort. Their missing you is their discomfort calling them to evolve. But your role is not to rescue, it's to inspire, to become so anchored in your worth that they must meet you at your level, not drag you down to theirs. If they return, meet them not with anger or fear, but with clarity. Let them see that your love was never a cage, it was a catalyst. And if they don't return, bless them, because their absence was also a gift. It was the universe's way of teaching you the difference between attachment and alignment. So when the avoidance starts missing you, let that be confirmation. Not that you were unlovable, but that your love left an impact so deep it pierced their defenses. Your energy is sacred. Your love is medicine. And when you honor your own heart, you send a signal to the universe that says, I am ready for love that stays, because the goal was never to be chased. The goal was to be chosen, and that begins when you choose yourself first. Now stand tall. Feel that truth rise in your chest. You are not here to beg for love. You are here to embody it. And when you do that, when you truly become love itself, every soul meant for you will find you. No walls can hold that back. No distance can silence it. That is your power. Emotional awareness doesn't always arrive in moments of connection. It often awakens in the silence that follows disconnection. For someone with avoidant tendencies, distance isn't just physical space. It's a shield. It's the emotional armor they've learned to wear after years of believing that closeness equals danger, vulnerability equals weakness, and love always comes with a cost. But when the person they care for steps away, when the messages stop, when the familiar energy fades, something subtle yet powerful begins to happen inside them. At first, they may feel relief. The weight of expectation is gone. They tell themselves, I can breathe again. Their nervous system, conditioned for self-preservation, mistakes solitude for safety. They return to old habits, immersion in work, hobbies, distractions, anything that allows them to avoid the discomfort of emotional intimacy. But avoidance isn't the absence of emotion. It's the suppression of it. And no matter how deeply someone buries their feelings, life has a way of bringing those emotions back to the surface when the silence grows long enough. Slowly, small memories begin to break through. The sound of laughter during a shared moment, the warmth of a gaze, the comfort of being seen without judgment. These recollections creep in unexpectedly, often when they least expect it. The avoidant person doesn't interpret this as missing someone right away. Instead, they experience it as restlessness, irritability, or unease. They might feel a sense of emptiness and not understand why. This is the moment emotional awareness begins to emerge. The unconscious starts whispering something is missing, and that something isn't just the other person. It's the sense of connection they unknowingly long for. Avoidant individuals often build their lives around independence. They pride themselves on being self-reliant, on not needing anyone. But emotional distance doesn't equal strength. It's a response to an old wound somewhere in their past. Love was unsafe. Perhaps it was conditional, inconsistent, or overwhelming. So they learned to shut down emotions as a way to survive. But when someone comes into their life and shows genuine care, that old defense begins to crack. For the first time in a long time, they feel warmth, closeness, and safety. Yet that same safety triggers fear. What if I lose this? What if I get hurt again? So they retreat when distance finally arrives, whether by their choice or yours. They think they've regained control, but what they've really done is cut themselves off from the very thing their soul was yearning for. The silence that once felt peaceful becomes heavy. The solitude that once felt empowering starts to echo. In that quiet space, the truth begins to reveal itself. They didn't just avoid someone else, they avoided themselves. Emotional awareness for an avoidant doesn't look like tears or sudden revelations. It's gradual, layered, and confusing. It shows up as subtle realizations. Pausing before responding to a text, rereading old conversations, scrolling through photos, or hearing a song that suddenly carries a different weight. They begin to question their own patterns. Why do I always push people away? Why do I feel empty when I get what I thought I wanted? This questioning is growth in motion. It's the beginning of awakening. Distance acts as a mirror. It reflects not just the absence of another, but the presence of one's inner void. The avoidant begins to confront emotions they've long denied. Longing, regret, tenderness, fear. They start recognizing that the safety they sought in solitude is false comfort. Because true safety isn't found in walls, it's found in emotional freedom. And freedom comes when we stop running from our feelings and start understanding them. This stage of emerging awareness is sacred because it reveals a truth that avoidance tried to hide. Beneath every guarded heart lies a deep desire to love and be loved. The missing that arises isn't weakness. It's evidence of their humanity. It's the soul's reminder that connection is not a threat. It's a need. And in that realization, even if they don't yet have the courage to act, something inside them begins to soften. They start to see that vulnerability isn't the end of control. It's the beginning of true strength. Emotional awareness through distance is, therefore, a divine process of reconnection with the self. It's not about chasing someone or proving worth. It's about allowing silence to do what presence could not, create space for truth. And when that truth surfaces, even the most avoidant heart begins to remember what it feels like to feel. Control is the comfort zone of the avoidant. It's the invisible fortress they build to protect themselves from emotional exposure. For someone with avoidant tendencies, emotional intimacy feels unpredictable, even dangerous. When they are in a relationship, they often manage their closeness by maintaining control. Control of their time, their space, and most importantly, their emotions. They convince themselves that independence equals safety, but something transformative happens when distance enters the equation. That tight grip of control begins to loosen, and what replaces it isn't chaos, it's curiosity. In the beginning, when an avoidant person senses emotional closeness becoming too intense, they pull back. It's an automatic reaction, like a reflex born out of past experiences. Their inner dialogue says, I need space. I can't breathe. The fear of engulfment, of losing themselves in another person, takes over. They withdraw, rationalizing their distance as a need for peace or clarity. But underneath that reasoning lies fear, the fear of being vulnerable, of being truly seen. Once they've retreated and created that distance, they feel relief. Control is restored. They believe they've reclaimed their power. Yet, as time passes, something unexpected begins to stir. The silence that once felt like victory starts to feel unfamiliar. The absence of communication becomes too quiet. They may check their phone more often, not because they plan to reach out, but because they're subconsciously waiting for a sign that they're still on your mind. This is where the shift begins. Their control begins to turn into curiosity. They start to wonder, what are they doing? Are they thinking of me? Have they moved on? Avoidants aren't immune to emotion. They're just conditioned to suppress it. But emotional suppression isn't sustainable. The longer they maintain control, the more that buried emotion pushes against their internal walls. Curiosity is the first crack. It's the moment the heart starts whispering beneath the mind's defenses. That curiosity might appear small at first, an urge to check your social media, a memory that replays unexpectedly, a dream about you. But each of those moments signals an inner conflict, the heart longing to reconnect and the mind insisting on staying detached. Control served them well for years. It helped them avoid pain, rejection, and emotional chaos, But now, in your absence, they begin to notice that control also prevents joy. It keeps love at bay. The same mechanisms that kept them safe also kept them lonely. Curiosity is their subconscious trying to find balance, to make sense of the contradiction between what they feel and what they fear. The person they once kept at arm's length becomes a mystery they want to solve. What made me feel safe with them? Why do I keep thinking about them? They begin to replay past moments not through logic, but through emotion, even if they won't admit it aloud. This curiosity isn't weakness, it's awakening. It's the human spirit reminding them that love cannot be controlled, only experienced. The avoidant starts to remember how connection once felt, not as a threat, but as warmth. They may begin to see the difference between losing control and letting go. The former is fear-driven, the latter is trust-driven. When they start to miss you, the desire to understand becomes stronger than the need to stay guarded. They may still hesitate to act on that curiosity, but inside, a shift is undeniable. They might start to notice synchronicities, hearing your favorite song, revisiting places you went together, or stumbling across something you said that now carries deeper meaning. Their logical mind tries to dismiss it, but their heart feels it. The tight grip of control begins to unravel, and they start to ask questions, not just about you, but about themselves. Why do I react this way? Why do I run when I care? This self-inquiry is powerful because it marks the beginning of emotional growth. Curiosity is the bridge between resistance and realization. It's how control begins to melt away. It's the gentle nudge from the universe reminding the avoidant that connection is not confinement. It's expansion. When they start missing you, their curiosity isn't just about you. It's about the part of themselves that came alive when they were with you. They realize that what they truly miss is not just your presence, but the freedom they felt to be emotionally open, even for a fleeting moment. In that realization, control no longer feels empowering. It feels limiting. The curiosity that once felt uncomfortable now becomes the seed of transformation. Because curiosity leads to awareness leads to courage, and courage leads to connection. What began as emotional withdrawal slowly transforms into an inner pull to understand, to feel, to reconnect with you, but more importantly, with themselves. The illusion of independence is one of the most deeply ingrained patterns within the avoidant personality. On the surface, it looks like strength, a proud declaration that they don't need anyone, that they can handle life entirely on their own. They wear self-sufficiency like armor, believing that dependence equals weakness and closeness means loss of control. But when distance settles in and the person they care for is no longer available, something profound begins to unfold. That illusion of independence starts to crack. The silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to them not power but loneliness, not freedom but isolation. Avoidant individuals often grow up in environments where love was conditional or inconsistent. They learned early that needing someone was risky, that vulnerability led to pain, so they built an identity rooted in independence. They told themselves, I'll never rely on anyone. I'll never give someone the power to hurt me again. It becomes a survival strategy, a way to ensure emotional safety. But the human spirit is not designed for isolation. Connection is as vital as air or water. It's part of our divine design. And no matter how much they try to suppress that need, the soul will always seek union. When they are in a relationship, avoidants often keep emotional distance, even in moments of closeness. They love, but they love cautiously. They care, but they hold back. Their independence becomes a mask for fear. Yet, when the person they've kept at arm's length finally steps away, the truth begins to surface. At first, they might feel relief. Their autonomy feels intact again. They're not being asked to open up, to explain, to engage emotionally. It feels peaceful, until it doesn't. Because as the days turn into weeks, the comfort of solitude starts to feel empty. What once was empowerment now feels like a void. It's in this space that the illusion starts to crumble. They begin to realize that. Independence without emotional connection is a half-lived life. They might still function, go to work, socialize, pursue hobbies, but internally something is missing. There's an ache they can't name, a quiet longing they can't ignore. They start to recognize that freedom and isolation are not the same thing. True freedom isn't about closing yourself off. It's about being whole enough to open your heart without fear of losing yourself. As this awareness deepens, the avoidant begins to see their own contradictions. They've spent years trying to avoid emotional pain, but that very avoidance has created suffering of another kind, emptiness. They begin to notice that. No achievement, no distraction, no level of control can fill the space left by genuine emotional connection. They realize that their version of independence was never true independence. It was emotional avoidance disguised as strength. This realization doesn't come easily. It's often accompanied by guilt, confusion, and a deep sense of vulnerability. They might replay moments where they pulled away, remembering the times you tried to reach them, the patience you showed, the love they couldn't fully receive, and for the first time, they might question why they believed independence meant being alone. They start to understand that self-reliance and connection are not opposites. They are complements. Real strength comes not from isolation, but from the ability to stand in one's truth while remaining open to love. When they start missing you, they don't just miss the moments. They miss the version of themselves that felt safe in your presence. They start to remember what it felt like to laugh freely, to share without fear, to be understood without words. That memory becomes a quiet teacher, showing them that connection doesn't have to mean loss of self. It can mean expansion, healing, and authenticity. The breaking of this illusion is both painful and liberating. It's as if their soul is whispering, "You were never meant to do this life alone." The distance you created becomes the mirror that reflects the truth. They weren't avoiding you, they were avoiding themselves. And in seeing that, they begin to understand that independence was never the goal. The goal was wholeness. As they awaken to this truth, something softens. The walls that once protected them begin to lower, not because they suddenly feel ready to love again, but because they finally see that love was never the enemy. It was the part of themselves they had been denying. The illusion of independence fades, and in its place rises a more balanced truth, that real power comes not from separation, but from the courage to connect while standing firmly in one's authenticity. It's here, in this awakening, that true freedom begins, not in isolation, but in connection guided by self-awareness and love. When the avoidant starts missing you, their emotions rarely come in grand displays or open confessions. Their feelings don't pour out in words. They leak out through subtle gestures, quiet actions, and almost imperceptible shifts in behavior. For someone who has spent a lifetime avoiding emotional exposure, missing someone feels like entering unfamiliar territory. They are not comfortable admitting their longing, even to themselves. So instead, they express it in indirect ways, in a message that seems casual but carries deeper meaning, in a sudden reappearance on your social media, in small acts that speak far louder than their words ever could. Avoidant individuals are highly protective of their emotional world. They fear vulnerability because, in their experience, it often leads to rejection, misunderstanding, or loss of control. So when they start to feel the weight of missing you, they rarely approach it head-on. Instead, they test the waters. Their communication becomes careful, measured. They might reach out under the guise of practicality. "Hey, do you still have that book I lent you?" Or just wondering if you're still using that gym membership. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing, but beneath those small gestures lies an entire emotional storm. They are trying to manage, they are looking for safety, they want to see if your energy is still open, if the space between you is still welcoming. For the avoidant, missing someone isn't just about longing, it's about fear. Fear that if they reach out directly, they'll be rejected. Fear that if they show too much, they'll lose control. So, they begin with small steps. They hover on the edges of your world. They might like an old post, reply to a story, or make a comment that seems meaningless but carries emotional intent. These gestures are their way of saying, "I'm still here," without having to risk too much. In many cases, these subtle actions are their way of reconnecting with your energy before reconnecting with your presence. They're trying to feel you again, to remember the emotional rhythm that once felt both safe and terrifying. They may drive by places you used to go together, revisit old conversations, or listen to songs that remind them of you. It's not nostalgia they're chasing, it's familiarity. In missing you, they are drawn back to the version of themselves that felt alive in your company, and yet they are still fighting the instinct to stay guarded. When the avoidant starts missing you, you may notice a shift in their tone. If they do reach out, they might sound more reflective, less defensive. The walls don't fall all at once, but cracks begin to form. They could ask about your well-being, not out of politeness, but because they genuinely want to know if you're okay. And though they may not verbalize their emotions directly, you can feel it in the pauses between their words, in the hesitation that wasn't there before. Their communication carries energy, one that speaks of unfinished emotion, unspoken regret, and tentative hope. For the avoidant, vulnerability doesn't start with confessions, it starts with observation. They study your response. Are you cold? Are you open? Are you indifferent? Their next move depends entirely on the emotional safety they perceive. This cautious approach is not manipulation, it's self-protection. Their nervous system has been wired to anticipate rejection, so they move slowly, testing the space. Each small gesture is their way of saying, "Can I come closer?" without having to say it outright. And yet, beneath those small gestures lies something profound: transformation. Because for the avoidant to even take these small steps, something inside them has already shifted. They have begun to value connection more than control. They have started to recognize that silence isn't strength, and that distance doesn't bring peace. It only deepens their ache. Those little messages, those half-hearted attempts at contact, are proof that the wall is cracking, and that their heart is remembering what it feels like to care. Their actions might not be grand, but their meaning is. The avoidance love doesn't shout, it whispers. It shows up in timing, in attention, in the small acts that carry emotional weight. And if you pay attention, you'll see that those subtle gestures are not about convenience or curiosity. They are about courage. The courage to reach out even when it terrifies them. The courage to admit through action, if not words, that they miss you. These small gestures are the language of a guarded heart learning to speak again. Every text, every glance, every small act of reconnection is their way of bridging the distance they created. It's not that they don't feel deeply. They feel more than they can express. But expression is their greatest fear, and when they begin to act in these subtle, almost invisible ways, it means that love is winning over fear. It means that missing you has awakened something within them, the part that longs to connect, even if it can only whisper what the heart already knows. Your energy is the mirror through which the avoidant begins to see themselves. When you step away and start reclaiming your peace, something powerful happens. Your vibration shifts. You move from anxiety to calm, from seeking to surrender, from confusion to clarity. And even though the avoidant may not consciously understand energy in spiritual terms, they feel the change. Human connection is energetic before it is emotional or physical, and when the energy that once surrounded them transforms, it disrupts their illusion of stability. They begin to sense your absence not merely as a missing person, but as an energetic imbalance in their world. Avoidant individuals are highly sensitive to energy, though they often disguise it behind detachment or logic. They notice tone changes, emotional distance, and shifts in attention. When you were emotionally available, reaching out, worrying, overgiving, they felt it. It was a constant stream of energy directed their way, and while that energy may have overwhelmed them at the time, it also grounded them. They knew where they stood with you. But when that energy suddenly becomes centered and self-contained, when you stop feeding their emotional world and redirect that power inward, the avoidant begins to notice. It's as if a light they didn't realize was guiding them suddenly flickers out. At first, they might not identify what feels different. They may go about their days normally, but something feels off. The energetic rhythm they were accustomed to, the push and pull, the attention, the subtle emotional tether, is gone. They feel a quiet disorientation. For someone who values control, this shift is deeply unsettling, because even though they feared intimacy, they relied on your emotional availability to anchor them. Now that you are grounded and at peace within yourself, they begin to feel their own internal restlessness rise to the surface. Energy doesn't lie. You can say you've moved on, but the universe responds to your true frequency. When you genuinely begin to heal, when you stop operating from longing or lack, your energy radiates self-worth. You no longer send out the vibration of pursuit, you send out the frequency of peace. And to the avoidant, that shift is magnetic. It's not the same as attention or affection. It's a silent strength that calls to them on a deeper level. They start to feel drawn to you, though they may not understand why. The energy that once overwhelmed them now feels balanced, safe, intriguing. This is why, paradoxically, the moment you release them energetically is often the moment they begin to feel your absence the most. The avoidance emotional awareness awakens when your energy no longer seeks them. When you detach with love instead of resentment, you mirror to them what healthy connection feels like, rooted, peaceful, and unattached. Your stability highlights their instability. Your calm exposes their inner chaos. And though their ego may resist this realization, their spirit begins to crave what your energy now represents. Peace without pressure, love without control, presence without demand. The more you rise into alignment with yourself, the stronger this energetic reflection becomes. They may find themselves thinking about you at odd times, dreaming of you, or feeling waves of emotion that seem to appear from nowhere. This is not coincidence, it's resonance. Your healed energy is communicating with theirs, not through words, but through the invisible field that connects all hearts. They begin to feel the pull toward you, not because of guilt or nostalgia, but because they sense a higher vibration. They unconsciously want to match. Your energy becomes both a mirror and a teacher. It reflects back to them what they have been avoiding within themselves, the parts that crave love but fear it, the parts that long for connection yet run from it. As you embody self-love, they are forced to confront their own emotional avoidance. They may start to wonder why your peace feels both comforting and unsettling. This internal conflict can stir growth. It pushes them to question their patterns, to examine the walls they've built, and to consider what real connection means. The divine irony is that by letting go, you become the catalyst for their awakening. The avoidant doesn't change because you chase or explain. They change when they feel your transformation. Your energy becomes a living message that says, I am whole on my own. That frequency carries more truth than any conversation ever could. It tells them that love doesn't demand, it invites. It doesn't cling, it expands. So as you rise into your own light, remember that your energy continues to speak long after your words have faded. The avoidant begins to feel that absence not as emptiness, but as contrast. The difference between survival and aliveness, between isolation and harmony. They may not have the words to describe it, but something inside them recognizes that your peace holds the very freedom they've been chasing all along. And in that recognition, their longing deepens. Not just for you, but for the wholeness your energy now mirrors back to them. When the avoidant starts to miss you, it can feel tempting to interpret their reappearance as a signal to fix what was broken, to reopen your heart and try once more to prove your love. But this moment isn't about rescuing or convincing them. It's about understanding that healing, both theirs and yours, requires compassion, not pursuit. Their longing isn't necessarily readiness, it's awakening. They are beginning to feel emotions they've avoided for years. And that process is both beautiful and fragile. It must unfold in divine timing, not through pressure or persuasion. Avoidant individuals often move through life in emotional survival mode. They've learned to equate attachment with danger, vulnerability with loss, and dependence with weakness. So, when they finally begin to miss someone, it marks the start of an internal transformation. It's their first confrontation with the truth they've been denying, that connection matters. But this recognition can also trigger fear. They begin to wrestle with conflicting impulses. One part wants to reach out, while the other still seeks protection behind their emotional armor. If you step in too quickly, trying to bridge the gap for them, they can retreat even further, overwhelmed by feelings they're not yet ready to process. Compassion in this stage doesn't mean waiting indefinitely or accepting unhealthy behavior. It means holding space without attachment. It's understanding that their distance isn't a rejection of your worth. It's a reflection of their own wounds. Healing an avoidant heart requires patience, but not the kind that sacrifices your peace. It's the kind of patience that allows both people to grow separately until meeting again is possible from a higher vibration. Compassion says, I understand where you are, but I must still honor where I am. This is where your boundaries become sacred. Because if you respond to their missing you by chasing, over-explaining, or trying to prove your love, you reinforce their belief that closeness equals loss of freedom. It validates their fear that intimacy means being overwhelmed. But when you respond with calm detachment and genuine care, you send a different message, one that says love can exist without control, that it's possible to care deeply without losing yourself. This energy is what begins to rewire the avoidant's internal narrative about love. Healing through compassion means seeing beyond the surface behavior. When they withdraw, it's not indifference, it's fear. When they act distant, it's not that they don't feel, it's that they feel too much. Avoidants experience emotions intensely but have never learned how to regulate them. Their avoidance is their coping mechanism. Compassion allows you to see their humanity while refusing to carry their healing for them. It means releasing the illusion that your love alone can transform them. Only they can choose to face their shadows. Your role is not to fix. It's to embody wholeness, to demonstrate through your energy what safety and self-respect look like. When they begin to miss you, that longing becomes their mirror. It forces them to confront the emptiness that avoidance created. Your calmness, your consistency with yourself becomes a new experience for them, one that challenges their belief that love is chaotic or consuming. You become a reflection of healthy love, and in that reflection, they begin to heal. but it only happens when you hold compassion instead of resentment, peace instead of pursuit. Compassion doesn't mean you allow re-entry without accountability. It means that if they do come back, you meet them with clarity. You listen, you observe, you allow them to show whether they've truly evolved. You do not reopen old wounds just because they feel regret. You protect your energy and allow only reciprocity. Compassion here means you can wish them healing, even if their journey no longer includes you. It's the ability to bless their path without losing faith in your own. The divine lesson in all this is that true love is never about control, it's about growth. When the avoidant starts to miss you, that's their soul nudging them toward evolution. But whether or not they answer that call is not your responsibility. Your task is to keep walking in light, to continue healing yourself, and to trust that whatever is meant for you will align in divine timing. Compassion is the bridge between love and release. It allows you to care without clinging, to understand without enabling, and to love without losing your peace. In this space of non-attachment, something miraculous happens. Your energy becomes both soft and strong. The avoidant may feel drawn back, not because you chase, but because your compassion feels different. It carries no demand, only truth. Whether they return or not, your compassion becomes your liberation. It's the proof that your love was never a weakness. It was a force for healing, one that transformed pain into wisdom and attachment into grace. Thank you for sharing this space and energy with me. It's been a beautiful exchange of growth and reflection. Goodbye for now, and may your path ahead be guided by peace, purpose, and unwavering self-love.